The brass bell above the cafe door chimed as I pushed it open, Andrea's small hand warm in mine. The scent of burnt espresso and toasted ciabatta wrapped around us, a shield against the damp autumn chill creeping in from the coastal street. My son's dark curls bounced as he craned his neck toward the pastry display. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's go back to hours before, where it all started. "Can we get the chocolate pastry, Mama?" he whispered, pressing closer to my leg. I squeezed his hand, my eyes already doing what they always did, scanning exits, cataloging faces, calculating distances. 5 years of running had carved these reflexes into my bones. After something healthy first, Tesoro. "I'm not a baby, Mama. I can have chocolate and real food," he protested, his small chin lifting with that stubborn determination I recognized too well. Despite my exhaustion, I smiled. Mrs. Cardoso at the bookshop didn't mind if I was a few minutes late, but I tried not to take advantage. She'd given me a job 4.5 years ago when I'd shown up, 7 months pregnant and terrified, with nothing but a fake ID and desperation. Andrea tugged my hand toward a table by the window, where autumn light filtered through salt-stained glass. That's when I saw him. Time fractured. My breath caught. My feet rooted to the worn tile floor as if the earth itself had grabbed my ankles. Fernando. He sat in the corner booth, a newspaper folded beside an espresso cup. 5 years had sharpened him, cut away whatever softness I'd imagined existed beneath the dangerous exterior. His dark hair was shorter, precisely styled. Even in a charcoal 3-piece suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, he radiated the kind of controlled danger that made smart people cross the street. His eyes found mine across the cafe, and recognition hit him like a gunshot. The cup froze halfway to his lips. His entire body went absolutely still, the predatory stillness of a wolf spotting its prey. Steel blue eyes, the exact shade as the ones that looked up at me every morning. I watched shock ripple across his features, followed by something darker. Fury, calculation, and beneath it all, something raw that made my stomach clench. "Mama," Andrea's voice seemed to come from underwater. Why did we stop? I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the man I'd fled 5 years ago, the father of the child whose hand I was crushing in my panic. Fernando stood. The newspaper fell forgotten. He moved with fluid, purposeful grace, weaving between tables, eating up the distance far too quickly. Each step deliberate, controlled, inevitable. I should have run, should have grabbed Andrea and bolted through the back door I'd already mapped in my mind. But my legs betrayed me, locked in place like my heart had been 5 years ago when I'd realized leaving him was the only way to survive. "Mama, who is that man?" Andrea asked, his voice losing its playful tone. He pressed against my leg. Why is he looking at us like that? Before I could answer, before I could lie, Fernando was there. 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Cedar and smoke and something darker, something that triggered memories I'd spent 5 years trying to bury. His chest rose and fell with controlled breaths. His jaw was tight, a muscle ticking beneath the groomed beard. His hands flexed at his sides, as if physically restraining himself from reaching for me. "Luana." My name on his lips was a prayer and an accusation. 5 years. I managed to nod, my throat closing around any words. Up close, I could see fine lines around his eyes, shadows beneath them. He looked like he'd aged a decade, like he'd been searching that entire time. His gaze dropped to Andrea, who had moved completely behind my leg now, small hands gripping my jeans. I watched Fernando's eyes trace my son's features with terrifying precision. Dark curls like mine, olive skin like mine, stubborn jaw, lifted chin. Then his eyes widened, because Andrea had one feature that wasn't mine. His eyes, storm blue, exactly like his father's. "How old is he?" Fernando's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried such intensity that the elderly couple at the next table glanced over nervously. Andrea stepped out from behind my leg, small arms crossed in a gesture that made my heart fracture. He looked so much like Fernando in that moment, all defiance and dignity wrapped in a 4-year-old body. "I'm 4.5, Andrea announced. "My mama says strange men are dangerous." "Are you dangerous, mister?" Despite everything, despite the fear clawing up my throat, I saw Fernando's lips twitch. Something softened in those dangerous eyes. "Your mama is a very smart woman." His voice had gentled, dropping to a tone I'd only heard in darkness, in moments I couldn't let myself remember. "I know." Andrea's tone suggested this was obvious. "She reads me stories every night and makes the best pancakes and keeps me safe from everything." Does she? Something shifted in Fernando's expression. Pain, regret, fierce possession all at once. He crouched to Andrea's eye level, bringing him dangerously closer to me. "What's your name, Piccolo?" "Andrea." My son studied him with unnerving seriousness. "Andrea Luca Marino." "Marino, my maiden name." The lie had been living for 5 years. Fernando's jaw tightened. When he looked up at me, I saw accusation and barely controlled fury burning behind the ice. "We need to talk." "I don't think. Are you going to make my mama cry?" Andrea's small voice carried unexpected fierceness. "Because if you are, you should go away. She cries enough already. I hear her at night when she thinks I'm sleeping." Pain flickered across Fernando's face, genuine, devastating pain. He stood slowly, movements careful, as if afraid sudden motion would shatter something fragile. "I never wanted to make your mama cry, Andrea." His voice was rough. "I only ever wanted to keep her safe, to make her happy." "Then you did a bad job," Andrea pronounced with brutal 4-year-old honesty. "Because she's scared all the time." "Andrea, basta." I managed, my voice cracking. I forced myself to meet Fernando's eyes. "We should go." "No." The word was absolute. His hand shot out, not touching me, but blocking my path. "You ran once, Luana. You don't get to run again." His voice dropped, deadly quiet. "Not now. Not after stealing 5 years from me." His gaze dropped to Andrea, and I saw something break open in his expression. "Not after taking him." "You don't understand." "Then make me understand." He stepped closer, invading my space, his presence overwhelming. "But not here. Come with me. 5 minutes. And if I say no," his smile was cold, predatory, "then I'll follow you home. To your work. Wherever you go. Because I've been watching you for 3 months, amore mio, and I'm not letting you disappear again." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "Never again." The bell above the door chimed. Fernando's entire body shifted, a subtle change from businessman to predator. His hand moved to his jacket, and I knew with terrifying certainty there was a weapon there. 3 men entered. Leather jackets, tattoos visible on their necks. Their eyes swept the cafe with professional efficiency before landing on us. On Andrea. Fernando's hand found my waist, pulling me and Andrea behind him in one fluid motion. His voice was deadly calm when he spoke, loud enough to carry. "Luana, take Andrea. Back door. Now." "Fernando, what?" "Now." He didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on the men, who had fanned out, blocking the exits with practiced ease. "And this time, when I find you again, you're going to stay found." One of the men smiled, revealing a gold tooth. "Hello, Fernando. Been looking for you. And for your family." The word family landed like a bullet. They knew. Somehow, they already knew about Andrea. My mind raced. The back door was 15 feet away, past the counter, through the kitchen. I could grab Andrea and run. I'd done it before. I could do it again. But Fernando's hand tightened on my waist, holding me in place. "Vittorio sent you?" He's very interested in meeting the woman who made Fernando Greco go soft. The man's eyes slid to Andrea, lingering in a way that made my blood turn to ice. And the boy, especially the boy. Andrea pressed closer to me, his small body trembling. I felt his fears spike through our connection, felt his confusion at the sudden shift in the air. He didn't understand the danger, but he felt it, sensed it in the way children always do. "Mama." His voice was so small. The barista behind the counter had frozen, the espresso machine hissing unattended. The elderly couple was gathering their things with shaking hands, trying to leave without drawing attention. The other patrons had gone silent, that primal instinct for danger rippling through the space. Fernando's voice was lethal calm. "You walk out now, and I'll forget you came." The man with the gold tooth laughed. "You're not in a position to make threats anymore, Fernando. You walked away. You lost your protection." His hand moved to his jacket. "But Vittorio, he's willing to take you back. All you have to do is hand over the woman and the boy. Insurance, you understand. To make sure you don't run again." Everything happened at once. Fernando moved, faster than I'd ever seen anyone move. His hand was on the man's wrist before the gun cleared his jacket, twisting with brutal efficiency. The crack of bone was audible even over Andrea's sudden scream. I grabbed Andrea, lifting him against my hip, turning toward the back door. But one of the other men was already there, blocking it, his hand inside his jacket. Fernando had the first man on the ground, knee on his spine, the man's own gun now in Fernando's hand. But there were two others, and they both had weapons drawn now, pointed at us. At Andrea. "Don't." Fernando's voice was ice. The gun in his hand never wavered, trained on the man blocking the back door. "You hurt them, and Vittorio won't have anything left to use against me, which means I'll have nothing left to lose. And you know what I'm capable of when I have nothing to lose." The standoff stretched, seconds feeling like hours. Andrea's face was buried in my neck, his small body shaking with sobs. I could feel his tears soaking through my sweater. The man Fernando had disarmed groaned from the floor. The other two exchanged glances, calculation in their eyes. They were weighing odds, measuring risks. Then the front door burst open. Two more men entered, but these wore suits. Clean-cut, professional. One spoke in his wrist, the other's hand inside his jacket, but not drawing. They moved with military precision, flanking the tattooed men. "Mr. Greco," the first one said, "your car is ready. We should leave. Now." Fernando's eyes never left the armed man. "Luana, go with Marco. Take Andrea. I'm not leaving you to... They're not here for me. They're here for you." His voice was flat, final. "And I will burn this entire city down before I let them touch either of you. But right now, you need to trust me. Go." The man he'd called Marco moved to my side, his body positioned between us and the threat. "Ma'am, please. We have a secure vehicle. Your son needs to be out of here." Andrea was still crying, his small hands fisted in my hair. I looked at Fernando, at the man I'd run from 5 years ago, now standing between us and violence with a gun in his hand and death in his eyes. That's when I realized running hadn't saved us at all. It had only delayed the inevitable. The danger I'd fled had found us anyway. And the only person standing between my son and that danger was the man I'd spent 5 years convincing myself was the greatest threat of all. "Luana." Fernando's voice softened, just for a moment. "Go. I'll find you. I promise." I nodded, my throat too tight for words. Marco's hand touched my elbow, guiding me toward a side door I hadn't even noticed, another man materializing to cover our exit. As we stepped into the alley, I heard Fernando's voice behind us, cold and absolute. "Tell Vittorio that if he comes near my family again, I'll finish what I should have finished 5 years ago." Then the door closed, and we were running. Marco's hand remained firm on my elbow as we burst into the alley, the salt-tinged coastal air hitting my face like a slap. A black SUV idled at the mouth of the narrow passage, its engine purring, windows tinted to obsidian. The second man, younger with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, pulled the rear door open before we'd even reached it. "Inside, ma'am. Quickly." I didn't argue. Andrea was still sobbing against my neck, his small body racked with tremors. I climbed in, pulling him onto my lap, and Marco slid in beside us. The door slammed. The vehicle was moving before I could process we were safe, if safe was even the right word anymore. The interior smelled of leather and gun oil. Bulletproof glass, I realized, noting the thickness of the windows. The partition between us and the driver was closed. Marco pulled out his phone, his thumb moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. "Status," he said into it, his voice clipped. A pause. I could hear Fernando's voice on the other end, muffled but unmistakable. That low, commanding tone that used to make me feel protected, before it made me feel trapped. Understood. ETA 12 minutes. Marco ended the call, then looked at me. His eyes were kind despite the professional hardness. Your son okay? I pressed my lips to Andrea's hair, breathing in his familiar scent of apple shampoo and childhood innocence. Andrea, Tesoro, it's okay. We're safe now. That man had a gun, Mama. His voice was muffled against my neck, thick with tears. Why did he have a gun? Why did that other man want to hurt us? How do you explain violence to a 4-year-old? How do you tell your son that the life you'd build on lies was always destined to crumble? Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices, I whispered. But you're safe. I promise. It was a lie. I didn't know if we were safe. I didn't know anything anymore except that the carefully constructed walls I'd built around our life had shattered in the span of 15 minutes. The SUV turned sharply, throwing me against Marco. He steadied me with one hand, the other resting on something at his hip. Another gun. How many weapons were in this vehicle? How many men did Fernando have at his disposal? Where are we going? I asked, hating how my voice shook. Secure location. Mr. Greco will meet us there. I didn't agree to, ma'am. Marco's voice was gentle but firm. Those men knew where you were. They knew about your son. If we'd been 30 seconds later. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Andrea had stopped crying, but his grip on my sweater hadn't loosened. I could feel his heart hammering against my chest, too fast, too hard. I pressed another kiss to his hair, my own heart matching his frantic rhythm. The city blurred past the tinted windows. We were heading away from the coast, climbing into the hills where the houses grew larger, the gates taller, the walls higher. Old money, the kind of wealth that didn't advertise itself, but demanded recognition anyway. 15 minutes later, we turned through iron gates that opened as we approached, closing immediately behind us. The driveway curved through manicured gardens, olive trees casting dappled shadows across perfect lawns. The house at the end was more estate than home, all stone and glass and architectural authority. The SUV stopped beneath a portico. Marco was out first, scanning the area before opening my door. Inside, please. I climbed out, Andrea clinging to me like a baby koala. Another man waited at the entrance, older, his suit immaculate, his expression neutral. Mrs. Greco will be. It's Marino, I said automatically. I'm not. The man's expression didn't change. Of course. Please follow me. The interior was exactly what I'd expected. High ceilings, marble floors, furniture that cost more than I'd earned in 5 years. But it wasn't ostentatious. It was restrained. Powerful. Everything about it screamed control. He led us to a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. A woman in her 50s appeared with juice and cookies, smiling gently at Andrea. For the little one, she said in accented English. My grandson loves these. Andrea looked at me for permission. I nodded, and he reached for a cookie with tentative fingers, his tears finally dried. Mr. Greco will be here shortly, the older man said. Please, make yourself comfortable. You're safe here. Then they left us alone in the beautiful room with its expensive art and its view of a life I'd never wanted. 20 minutes crawled by. Andrea ate 3 cookies and drank half the juice, his natural resilience already pushing through the trauma. He was exploring the room now, touching things with careful fingers, asking questions I didn't have answers for. Then Fernando walked in. He'd lost the jacket. His vest was unbuttoned, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing those tattoos I'd once traced with my fingers in the dark. There was blood on his collar, a split across his knuckles. But his eyes found Andrea first, cataloging him, ensuring he was unharmed before they moved to me. You're hurt, I said before I could stop myself. It's not my blood. He moved toward us, then stopped, as if remembering he didn't have that right anymore. Andrea, are you okay? My son looked at him with those mirror image eyes. You said bad words in the cafe. Mama doesn't like bad words. Despite everything, Fernando's lips twitched. You're right. I apologize. Andrea considered this, then nodded, apparently satisfied. He returned to examining a crystal sculpture on the side table. Fernando's attention shifted to me, and the weight of it was suffocating. "We need to talk. You said that already. And you ran. Again." His jaw tightened. "But you can't run from this, Luana. Not anymore. Those men, they're because of you. Because of what you are, what you've always been." My voice was low, conscious of Andrea's presence. "This is exactly why I left. I know. The admission shocked me. I know why you ran. I understood it even when it destroyed me." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "But I'm not that man anymore. I walked away, Luana. 2 years ago. I severed ties with the family, with the business, with everything. Then why are they hunting you? Because Vittorio doesn't accept that anyone leaves. Because he sees my exit as betrayal, as weakness. His eyes were fierce. And because 3 months ago, he found out about you. About the woman I've been searching for since the day she disappeared. My breath caught. You've been looking for me for 5 years. Every single day." The raw honesty in his voice cracked something in my chest. "And when I finally found you, when I saw you living in that tiny apartment above the bookshop, working 2 jobs to make ends meet, I wanted to—" He stopped, his hands flexing. "But I waited. I watched. I made sure you were safe. I was going to approach you properly, explain everything. And then Vittorio's men found you 2 days ago. The room tilted. 2 days. I've had men watching you since. That's how Marco got there so fast." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Luana, listen to me. Vittorio won't stop. He'll use you and Andrea to pull me back in, or he'll kill you both to punish me for leaving. Either way, you're in danger. You've been in danger since the moment I found you. Then we'll disappear again. I've done it before. You can't hide from him. Not anymore. He has resources, connections." Fernando's voice was absolute. "But so do I. Here, in this compound, you're protected. State-of-the-art security, trained personnel, everything you need. You want us to move in with you?" The words came out strangled. "You want me to just trust you after you left without a word? After you kept my son from me for 5 years?" His voice turned hard. "No, Luana, I don't expect your trust, but I'm not asking for it either. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You and Andrea will stay here, under my protection, until Vittorio is no longer a threat. And if I refuse—" He leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "Then I'll follow you wherever you go. And when Vittorio's men come, because they will come, you'll wish you'd accepted my offer." He pulled back, his eyes burning into mine. "Your choice, amore mio. Prison or sanctuary. But either way, you're not leaving my sight again." Andrea's voice cut through the tension. "Mama, I like it here. Can we stay?" Fernando's expression softened as he looked at our son. When he spoke again, his voice had gentled. "I've had a room prepared for him. Toys, books, everything a boy his age needs. You can have the entire East Wing if you want space for me." His eyes returned to mine. "But you will stay." I looked at Andrea, at his curious, innocent face, at the blood on Fernando's collar, at the reality I could no longer deny. We were trapped, not by Fernando, but by the consequences of a past I'd thought I could outrun. "How long?" I asked quietly. "As long as it takes." I closed my eyes, feeling the last of my carefully built life crumble to dust. One condition: Andrea doesn't see violence. Whatever you have to do, he doesn't see it. Agreed. I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze. "Then we'll stay. But this doesn't mean I forgive you, Fernando. It doesn't mean anything except survival." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, perhaps. Or acceptance. "Survival," he repeated softly. "For now, that's enough." The room Fernando had prepared for Andrea was a child's fantasy brought to life. Walls painted in soft blues and greens depicted an underwater world, complete with hand-painted dolphins and sea turtles. A bed shaped like a ship occupied one corner, surrounded by shelves overflowing with books and toys still in their packaging. A wooden chest sat at the foot of the bed, its lid propped open to reveal more treasures inside. Andrea's gasp was audible. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with wonder and uncertainty. "Is this really for me, Mama?" My throat tightened. "Yes, Tesoro." He released my hand and ran to the ship bed, climbing aboard with the pure joy only children possess, the trauma of the cafe already fading into the background noise of childhood. Fernando stood in the doorway, watching our son with an expression I couldn't quite read. Hunger, longing, regret. There's a bathroom through there, Fernando said, pointing to a door I hadn't noticed. And your room is connected through that one. He indicated another door on the opposite wall, so you can hear him at night. Of course, he'd thought of everything. The idea of sleeping in a room connected to my son's, in Fernando's house, surrounded by his guards and his world, made my skin prickle with claustrophobia. I want to see it, I said. Fernando nodded and led me through the connecting door. If Andrea's room was a child's dream, mine was a gilded cage. Enormous windows overlooked manicured gardens that stretched toward distant hills. A four-poster bed dominated the space, draped in linens that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Everything was cream and gold and suffocatingly expensive. The closet is through there. Maria has already stocked it with clothes in your size. Fernando's voice was carefully neutral. If you need anything else, just ask. How do you know my size? The question came out sharper than I'd intended. His eyes held mine. I've been watching you for 3 months, Luana. I know everything. The words should have felt threatening. Instead, they felt intimate, possessive. I turned away, arms crossed over my chest. I don't need clothes. We won't be here long enough for that to matter. You'll be here as long as necessary. His tone brooked no argument. Vittorio isn't some street thug you can hide from in another city. He has reach, resources, patience. Until I've neutralized the threat, this is your home. This isn't my home. It's a prison with expensive furniture. Fernando moved closer, and I felt the heat of him at my back. If it were a prison, you wouldn't have access to the entire estate. You wouldn't have freedom to move, to breathe. You'd be locked in a room with bars on the windows. His voice dropped. I'm offering you protection, not captivity. There's a difference. I spun to face him, anger finally finding its voice. The difference is semantics. I can't leave. I can't work. I can't live my life. How is that freedom? It's life, Luana, which is more than Vittorio will give you. He stepped back, putting distance between us. I'll leave you to settle in. Dinner is at 7. Maria will show you to the dining room. He left, closing the door with quiet finality. I stood in the center of the beautiful room, feeling the walls press in despite their grandeur. Through the connecting door, I could hear Andrea playing, his laughter bright and uncomplicated. At least one of us was adapting. The first week crawled by in a haze of routine and resistance. Andrea flourished like a plant finally given sunlight. Fernando took him to the gardens, taught him to identify birds, read him stories before bed in a voice gone soft with wonder. I watched them together, this man and this boy who shared the same eyes, the same stubborn set to their jaws, and felt something painful twist in my chest. Fernando was patient with Andrea in ways I'd never seen him be with anyone. Gentle, present. He answered endless questions about everything from why the sky was blue to how boats floated. He built block towers just to let Andrea knock them down. He played games and lost gracefully and praised every small accomplishment with genuine pride. It was the Fernando I'd fallen in love with before the darkness of his world had consumed everything else. But with me, he maintained careful distance. Polite, formal. He provided everything we needed, but never pushed, never demanded more than I was willing to give, which somehow made it worse. I could have fought against demands, against expectations, but his restraint left me nothing to push back against except my own conflicted feelings. The estate itself was both beautiful and oppressive. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their presence a constant reminder of the danger lurking beyond the walls. Security cameras tracked movement through every corridor. The gate required biometric authentication to open. I was safe, yes, but I was also trapped. I tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. I read to Andrea every night, maintained his bedtime routine, taught him letters and numbers in the morning. But the opulence of our surroundings made everything feel surreal. The marble floors were too perfect, the furniture too expensive, the silence between Fernando and me too loaded with things unsaid. On the 8th day, I woke to find Andrea's bed empty. Panic seized my chest. I ran through the connecting door into the hallway, my heart hammering. Andrea! Voices drifted from downstairs. I followed them to a sunlit breakfast room where Andrea sat at the table with Fernando, both of them focused on a plate of pancakes. My son was chattering about a dream he'd had, gesturing wildly with his fork. Fernando looked up as I entered, something softening in his expression. Good morning. Andrea wanted pancakes. I hope that's all right. I should have been angry. You should have asked permission before taking my son anywhere, even within the house. But Andrea looked so happy, so animated that the words died in my throat. Mama, look. Fernando makes pancakes with chocolate chips, and they're almost as good as yours. Andrea's grin was infectious. Almost. Fernando raised an eyebrow, feigning offense. I'll have to work on my technique. I poured coffee from the carafe on the sideboard, needing something to do with my hands. You don't have to cook for him. I can. I wanted to, Fernando said simply. He's my son. I missed 4 years of mornings like this. I like to make up for lost time, if you'll let me. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something in my defenses. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and took a seat across from them. The days developed a rhythm. Fernando worked from home, disappearing into his office for hours while Andrea and I explored the gardens or played in the game room. Meals were shared, conversations carefully neutral. Andrea bridged the gap between us, his innocent questions and observations forcing Fernando and me to interact, to coordinate, to parent together in ways that felt both natural and terrifying. I watched Fernando watching us, saw the hunger in his eyes when Andrea laughed, noticed how his hands flexed when I was near, as if physically restraining himself from reaching out. The tension between us built like a storm, gathering strength. Unspoken words and buried feelings creating pressure neither of us acknowledged. 10 days in, I woke in the middle of the night to voices. Low, tense, coming from somewhere below. I slipped from bed, checking on Andrea. He was sound asleep, his small body sprawled across the ship bed, one arm hanging off the edge. I followed the voices down the stairs, careful to stay in the shadows. Fernando stood in his office, the door ajar, his back to me. He was on the phone, his voice clipped and cold. I don't care what he's offering. The answer is no. A pause. Because I'm done, Luca. I told the family 2 years ago. I'm telling you now. I'm out. Another pause, longer this time. If Vittorio has a problem with that, he can take it up with me directly. But he leaves him out of it. That's not negotiable. Silence. Fernando's hand tightened on the phone, his knuckles white. Then tell him I said to go to hell. His voice turned lethal. And Luca, if any of you come near my family again, if anyone even looks at them wrong, I will remind you exactly why people used to cross the street when they saw me coming. We clear. He ended the call, and I saw his shoulders drop, exhaustion radiating from every line of his body. Then he turned, and his eyes found me in the shadows. How much did you hear? I stepped into the light, my heart pounding. Enough. You said you were out, that you'd walked away. I did walk away. He set the phone down carefully. But the family doesn't accept that. They think everyone can be bought back, controlled, manipulated. His eyes were hard. They're wrong. That call didn't sound like someone who's out. It sounded like someone still very much involved. That call was me protecting you. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Vittorio keeps testing boundaries, sending messages through old contacts. He wants me back, and he thinks you and Andrea are his leverage. And what did you offer them to leave us alone? The question tasted bitter. What deal did you make, Fernando? No deal. No compromise. His jaw tightened. I told them exactly what would happen if they came near you. That's all. I don't believe you. The words hung between us, sharp and accusing. You're still connected to them. Still part of that world. This house, these guards, everything about this situation proves you never really left. I use the resources I have to protect what's mine. His voice was quiet but fierce. That doesn't mean I'm still part of the family business. It means I'm willing to use every weapon at my disposal to keep you and Andrea safe. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe that the man I'd loved had truly walked away from the darkness. But the phone call had brought it all back, the fear that had driven me away 5 years ago. The certainty that Fernando's world would eventually consume us all. I'm going back to bed, I said, turning away. Luana. His voice stopped me. I know you don't trust me. I know I have to earn that. But everything I do, every decision I make, it's for you and Andrea. Whether you believe that or not. I didn't answer. I climbed the stairs back to my gilded room, closed the door, and stood at the window looking out at the gardens bathed in moonlight. Beautiful, perfect, and completely, utterly trapped. Just like me. I didn't sleep. I lay in the expensive sheets, staring at the ceiling, replaying the phone call in my mind. The coldness in Fernando's voice. The threats barely veiled beneath professional courtesy. The certainty that he could still command fear with just words. When dawn finally broke, washing the room in pale gold light, I made a decision. I couldn't live like this, suspended between gratitude and suspicion, safety and captivity. I needed answers. Real ones. Not the carefully edited version Fernando offered in front of Andrea. I showered and dressed in jeans and a sweater from the closet he'd stocked, hating how perfectly everything fit. How well he knew me, even after 5 years apart. I checked on Andrea, still sleeping peacefully, his dark curls splayed across the pillow. Then I went to find Fernando. He was on the terrace overlooking the gardens, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. He'd changed from last night's clothes into dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes suggesting he'd slept as poorly as I had. "You're up early," he said without turning around. "I want the truth." I moved to stand beside him, maintaining distance. All of it. No more half answers. No more protecting me from information I need to make decisions about my son's safety. He took a slow sip of coffee, his gaze still on the horizon. "What do you want to know?" "That phone call. Who was Luca? And what did Vittorio offer you?" Fernando's jaw tightened. Luca was my second when I ran operations for the family. Loyal, competent, ruthless when necessary. He set his cup down on the stone balustrade. Vittorio offered to forgive my exit, reinstate my position, double my territory. All I had to do was come back. And you refused. Of course I refused. He turned to face me, his eyes fierce. "Do you think anything they could offer would be worth going back to that life? Worth Andrea growing up, watching his father become what I was? What were you, Fernando?" The question came out quieter than I'd intended. "You never told me everything. Never let me see the whole picture." He studied me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "You want the truth? The unvarnished, ugly truth?" "Yes." He leaned against the balustrade, his posture deceptively relaxed. "I ran the family's operations in the Eastern Territories. Import, export, protection, enforcement. I was good at it, Luana. Terrifyingly good. People feared me because I never made empty threats, never showed mercy to those who betrayed the family." His voice was flat, factual. "I hurt people. I made decisions that destroyed lives. I did things that would make you sick if I detailed them. My stomach churned, but I didn't look away. Why did you stop? Because of you." The admission was raw. "Not at first. At first, I kept you separate from that world, compartmentalized. You were the light. I came home to the one pure thing in my life. But the longer we were together, the harder that became. I'd sit across from you at dinner with blood still under my fingernails, literally and metaphorically, and I'd see you looking at me like I was a good man." He laughed bitter. "I wasn't a good man, Luana. I was a monster pretending to be human in stolen moments with you. Then why didn't you leave sooner?" "Because leaving isn't simple. The family doesn't give exit interviews and retirement parties." He pushed off the balustrade, pacing. "I started planning 2 years before you left. Moved money, established legitimate businesses, built relationships with people outside the family's reach. When you disappeared, when I realized you were gone because you'd finally seen what I really was, it broke something in me." He stopped, his back to me. "And it freed me. Because without you, I had nothing left to lose. So you walked away. I burned it down on my way out." He turned, and I saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. "I gave prosecutors enough information to dismantle 3 competing organizations. I transferred assets to offshore accounts the family couldn't touch. I made it clear that if anyone came after me, I had insurance that would destroy them all." His voice dropped. "They let me go because keeping me was more expensive than letting me leave. But Vittorio, he never accepted it. He sees my exit as weakness, as betrayal. And he's been looking for leverage ever since. And then he found us. And then he found you. Fernando moved closer, his presence overwhelming. The woman I'd been searching for. The child I never knew existed. Perfect leverage to pull me back, or perfect revenge if I refused. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the morning warmth. The sacrifices you mentioned. What did you give up? Everything. The word was absolute. My position, my reputation, my connections. I gave up half my fortune to the family as penance for leaving. I severed relationships with anyone still connected to that world. I built legitimate businesses from the ground up, paid my taxes, played by society's rules. He laughed bitterly. Do you know how hard that is for someone like me? To operate within legal boundaries? To build something clean when everything I knew was dirty? Why go through all that? Because I wanted to be someone different. Someone worthy of the woman who left me because she saw exactly what I was. His eyes held mine. I wanted to be the man you thought I was in those stolen moments. Not the monster I actually was. You're still using resources from that world. Guards, security, whatever network you used to find me. I gestured at the estate. This isn't exactly a legitimate businessman's lifestyle. The resources are mine, paid for with clean money, staffed by people who work for me, not the family. Everything I have now, I built legally. His voice was firm, but I kept certain skills, certain connections with people who owe me personally, not the organization. I'd be a fool to walk away completely defenseless, especially once I learned about you and Andrea. How did you find us? Private investigator. Legitimate, licensed, no family connections. He ran a hand through his hair. It took 3 years and most of my liquid assets, but I found you. And then I watched you struggle in that tiny apartment, working 2 jobs, raising our son alone, and I wanted to... He stopped, his jaw clenching. But I waited. I made sure Vittorio didn't know. I planned how to approach you, how to prove I'd changed. And then everything went to hell. The silence stretched between us, heavy with confession and consequence. I looked at this man who'd been both my salvation and my nightmare, who'd built a new life to be worthy of one he'd lost, who stood between me and violence with the same ruthless efficiency he'd once used for darker purposes. The phone call last night, I said slowly, what did Luca really want? Fernando's expression hardened. To deliver a message. Vittorio knows you're here. He's given me 1 week to return to the family, or he'll take more direct action. Ice flooded my veins. Direct action meaning? Meaning he'll stop testing boundaries and start breaking them. Fernando moved closer, his voice intense. But I meant what I said on that call. I'll protect you and Andrea with everything I have, everything I am. Legitimate or not, legal or not, I will keep you safe. By becoming a monster again, if that's what it takes. His honesty was brutal. I'd rather Andrea grow up knowing his father was a monster who protected him than grow up without a father at all. I wanted to argue, to tell him there had to be another way, a better way. But the memory of those men in the cafe, the guns drawn in broad daylight, Andrea's terrified screams, they all told a different story. Sometimes monsters were necessary. Sometimes violence was the only language certain people understood. I need to think, I said finally. Take all the time you need. Fernando stepped back, giving me space. But Luana, understand this. I'm not asking you to forgive me for what I was or what I did. I'm not even asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me be a father to our son, to let me protect both of you. Not as the man I was, but as the man I'm trying to become. He walked past me, pausing at the terrace door. Andrea will be awake soon. I promised him we'd build a tree house today. His voice softened. You're welcome to join us. Or not. But either way, I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the sunrise and the weight of choices I'd never wanted to make. I stood there, watching the gardens come alive with morning light, and realized that everything I'd believed for 5 years was more complicated than I'd let myself acknowledge. Fernando wasn't just the monster I fled. He wasn't just the protector standing between us and danger. He was both. And somehow, I had to figure out how to live with that truth. For Andrea's sake, if not for my own. The tree house took 3 days to build. Not because it was complicated, but because Andrea insisted on helping with every step, his small hands attempting to hold nails steady while Fernando hammered with patient precision. I watched from the garden below, pretending to read, but unable to look away from the sight of them together. Fernando was gentle with Andrea in ways that made my chest ache. He explained the process in simple terms, praised every contribution, never showed frustration when Andrea's attention wandered to chase a butterfly or examine an interesting beetle. This was the man I'd fallen in love with, the one I'd glimpsed in rare, unguarded moments 5 years ago. Tender, patient, wholly present in a way I'd convinced myself he could never sustain. "Mama, look," Andrea called down, his face flushed with pride. I hammered a whole nail myself. "I see, Tesoro. You're doing such a good job." Fernando glanced down at me, something warm in his eyes, before returning his attention to Andrea. "All right, Piccolo, let's put the roof on. That's the most important part. Keeps the rain out. And the monsters," Andrea added seriously. "Especially the monsters." Fernando's voice was solemn, matching Andrea's tone perfectly. Every good treehouse needs monster protection. They worked until the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. When they finally climbed down, Andrea was covered in sawdust and grinning so wide it threatened to split his face. Fernando wasn't much better, his expensive shirt ruined, with shavings in his hair. "Bath time," I announced, and Andrea groaned dramatically but allowed me to lead him inside. By the time I'd wrestled him into pajamas and read 2 stories, exhaustion had claimed him. I kissed his forehead, breathing in the clean scent of soap and childhood, and found Fernando waiting in the hallway when I emerged. "He's out cold," I said softly. "He worked hard today." Fernando's expression was tender. "He's a good kid, Luana. You've done an incredible job with him." The compliment caught me off guard. I did what any mother would do. "You did alone. That's not nothing." He hesitated, then added, "Thank you for not poisoning him against me. You could have told him I was a monster, that he should fear me. But you didn't. He's 4 years old. He doesn't need to know about monsters yet." I moved past him toward the stairs. "There's time enough for that when he's older." "Luana," his voice stopped me. "I know you're still deciding whether you could trust me. I know I have to earn that. But watching you with him today, watching him laugh and play and be a child despite everything, I just wanted you to know, you're an incredible mother." I didn't know how to respond to the raw honesty in his voice, so I simply nodded and continued downstairs, feeling the weight of his gaze on my back. The days that followed developed a rhythm that felt dangerously close to normal. Mornings with Andrea in the garden, teaching him about plants and birds. Afternoons while Fernando worked in his office, Andrea napping or playing quietly while I read. Evenings together, the 3 of us, dinner at the large table that suddenly felt less intimidating with Andrea's chatter filling the silence. Fernando was careful never to push, never to demand more than I offered. But his presence was constant, steady, a gravitational pull I felt even when he was in another room. I'd catch him watching us, Andrea and me, with an expression of such fierce longing it made something twist in my chest. He looked at his son the way drowning men look at air. One afternoon, I found him in the library. Andrea was curled in Fernando's lap, both of them absorbed in a storybook. Fernando's voice had dropped to that gentle cadence reserved for children, bringing the characters to life with different accents and sound effects. Andrea giggled at Fernando's impression of a grumpy bear, his small hand resting trustingly on Fernando's tattooed forearm. I stood in the doorway, unnoticed, watching this intimate moment between father and son. Fernando's face was soft, unguarded, transformed by love into something almost painful to witness. This was who he could have been, who he was trying to be. Not the monster, but the man beneath. Andrea spotted me first. "Mama, Fernando's reading the dragon story. Come listen." "I don't want to interrupt," I started, but Fernando's eyes found mine, and something in that gaze made the words die. "Please," he said simply, "join us." I moved to the armchair beside them, close enough to see the illustrations, far enough to maintain distance. But Andrea had other ideas. He wriggled out of Fernando's lap and climbed into mine, then grabbed my hand and Fernando's, pulling them together. "Now we're all together for the story," he announced, satisfied. My hand was trapped in Fernando's, his palm warm and rough against mine. I could have pulled away, should have, but Andrea was already settling back against my chest, waiting expectantly. Fernando's thumb moved against my knuckles, a barely there caress, and I felt heat flood my body at the simple contact. He continued reading, his voice steady, but I was hyper-aware of every point of connection. His shoulder nearly touching mine, his thigh inches away. The scent of him, cedar and something darker, filling my lungs with every breath. The memories it triggered of other moments, other touches when we'd been different people leading different lives. When the story ended, Andrea yawned hugely. "Can I go play my treehouse before dinner?" "It's getting dark soon," I cautioned. "Just for a little bit?" "Please, Mama." Fernando glanced at me, waiting for permission. I nodded, and he said 20 minutes. Then inside. "Marco will be right there," Fernando added as Andrea scampered off. "He won't be out of sight." We were alone, suddenly, the library feeling smaller, the air thicker. I tried to pull my hand away, but Fernando's fingers tightened, holding me in place. "Don't," he said softly. "Not yet." "Fernando, we can't." "Can't what?" "Sit together. Touch." His eyes were intense, searching mine. "I'm not asking for anything more, Luana. Just this. Just a moment where we're not enemies or strangers or people trapped by circumstance. Just us. There is no us. There hasn't been for 5 years. Tell that to your hand." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "Tell that to the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. Tell that to whatever this is still between us." I should have argued, should have pulled away, reinforced the boundaries I tried to maintain. But the truth was he was right. There was something still between us, something that 5 years in fear and betrayal hadn't managed to kill. Something that flared to life every time he was near, every time his eyes held mine, every time I watched him with our son and remembered why I'd loved him in the first place. "This is a mistake," I whispered. "Probably." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. "But God, Luana, I've missed you. Every day, for 5 years, I've missed you so much it felt like dying." The raw pain in his voice cracked something in my defenses. I turned to face him fully and found him closer than I'd realized. Close enough to see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. Close enough to remember exactly how his lips had felt against mine. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of you. Of this. Of what happens when the danger passes and we're left with just us and all this history. I'm scared too." His free hand came up to cut my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "Terrified, because I can't lose you again. I won't survive it a second time." He leaned in, his intention clear, and for a moment I let myself want it. Let myself remember what it felt like to be wanted by him, loved by him, consumed by him. Our faces were inches apart, his lips so close I could almost taste them. Then reality crashed back. The phone call in the night, the blood on his collar, the life he'd lived, the things he'd done, the certainty that loving Fernando Greco had only ever led to pain. I jerked back, standing so quickly I nearly knocked over the lamp. "I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't do this." The pain that flashed across his face was devastating. But he didn't argue, didn't push. He simply stood, hands in his pockets, and nodded. "I understand. Do you?" My voice was sharper than intended. "Do you understand that every time I look at you, I remember why I left? That every time I start to feel safe, I remember that your world, your past, it almost destroyed me once? I can't go back to that, Fernando. I won't. I'm not asking you to go back to anything. I'm asking you to give me a chance to show you forward." His voice was quiet but intense. "To show you that the man I'm trying to be is worth the risk. And what happens when Vittorio is dealt with? When the danger passes and we don't have survival holding us together? What then? Then you decide." He moved toward the door, pausing in the frame. "You decide if what I've shown you is enough. If who I'm becoming is someone you could let yourself love again." He looked back, his eyes holding mine. "But Luana, know this. Whether you choose to stay or go, whether you forgive me or not, I will never stop being Andrea's father. And I will never stop wanting you. He left, and I stood alone in the library, my hands still tingling from his touch, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to stop the tears threatening to fall. Because the truth I couldn't admit, not even to myself, was that I was already falling again. Watching him with Andrea, seeing the man he was trying to become, feeling that old pull between us resurface despite everything I'd done to bury it. I was falling, and I was terrified of the landing. The alarm shattered the pre-dawn silence like breaking glass. I bolted upright, heart hammering, disoriented in the darkness. The sound was sharp, insistent, nothing like any alarm I'd heard before. Then I heard footsteps, running, and voices shouting outside. Andrea! I threw off the covers and ran through the connecting door. He was sitting up in bed, rubbing his eyes, confusion written across his small face. Mama? What's that noise? It's okay, Tesoro. I scooped him into my arms, trying to keep my voice calm despite the panic clawing at my throat. We just need to. The door burst open. Fernando stood there, fully dressed despite the hour, a gun in his hand. His face was hard, all business, the tender father from yesterday, replaced by something colder, more dangerous. Basement. Now. His voice left no room for argument. Marco's waiting at the stairs. What's happening? Vittorio. The single word was enough. He's breaching the perimeter. 6 men, heavily armed. We have maybe 3 minutes before they reach the house. Ice flooded my veins. I clutched Andrea tighter, his small body trembling against mine. You said we were safe here. You promised. And I'll keep that promise. Fernando moved to us, his free hand cupping my face. The gesture was gentle despite the violence in his eyes. But I need you in the safe room. Both of you. Right now. He guided us into the hallway where Marco waited, another guard I didn't recognize flanking him. Both were armed, faces grim. Take them down, Fernando ordered. Code 7 protocol. No one gets through that door. Sir, you should come with us, Marco said. We can hold them off in the safe room until police arrive. Police response time is 12 minutes. Too long. Fernando's jaw was set. I'm ending this tonight. Fernando, don't. I grabbed his arm, terror making my voice crack. Please, just come with us. We can wait for help. He looked at me, and for a moment the hardness cracked, revealing something raw beneath. If I hide, they'll keep coming. Tonight, tomorrow, next week. They'll never stop, Luana. But if I show them what happens when they threaten what's mine, they'll think twice before trying again. You'll get yourself killed. No. His smile was cold, predatory. I won't. Andrea whimpered, burying his face in my neck. Fernando's expression softened as he touched our son's hair. Be brave, Piccolo. I'll be back before you know it. Then he was gone, moving toward the stairs with deadly purpose. Marco's hand touched my elbow. Ma'am, please. We have to move. The basement safe room was everything a panic room should be. Reinforced walls, independent ventilation, monitors showing every angle of the estate. Marco locked us in, and I settled on the small sofa with Andrea in my lap, trying to comfort him while my own heart threatened to break through my ribs. Why is everyone shouting, Mama? His voice was small, scared. Remember how Fernando said the treehouse needed monster protection? I smoothed his curls back. Well, sometimes monsters try to come to the big house too. But Fernando is very good at keeping monsters away. It was a sanitized version of reality, a child's story wrapped around adult violence. But what else could I say? That men with guns were trying to kill us? That his father was upstairs preparing for a war? Marco stood by the monitors, speaking into his radio in low, clipped tones. I couldn't hear the responses, but his expression grew grimmer with each update. On the screens, I watched figures moving through the gardens, dark shapes against darker shadows. 6 men, Fernando had said. 6 men with weapons, coming to take everything. Then, I saw Fernando. He moved through the camera feeds like a ghost, appearing and disappearing between blind spots. He wasn't running or hiding. He was hunting. The predatory grace I'd seen in the cafe was magnified tenfold, every movement precise, purposeful, lethal. The first man went down silently in the east garden. One moment he was there, the next he was on the ground, and Fernando had his weapon. The second fell near the pool house, never seeing Fernando coming. It was like watching a wolf among sheep, efficient and brutal and terrifyingly effective. "Mama, I'm scared." Andrea's voice pulled my attention from the screens. "I know, baby. Me too." I held him tighter, pressing kisses to his hair. "But we're safe here. Nothing can hurt us here." On the monitor, 3 men converged on the main house. They moved with military precision, covering each other, weapons raised. They weren't amateurs. These were professionals, trained killers sent by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Fernando intercepted them at the terrace entrance. What happened next made my blood freeze. The violence was swift, brutal, surgical. Fernando moved like violence given human form, each action flowing into the next with practiced ease. Disarm, disable, neutralize. 3 men down in less than 30 seconds, and Fernando barely looked winded. But there were still 2 more. They came from different directions, trying to flank him. Smart tactics. They'd been watching, learning. One fired, and I gasped as Fernando dove behind the stone balustrade, returning fire with controlled precision. The muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like lightning. Andrea was crying now, hard, scared sobs that broke my heart. I turned him away from the monitors, holding his face against my shoulder. "Don't look, Tesoro. Close your eyes. It'll be over soon." But I couldn't look away. I watched Fernando move with that terrifying efficiency, watched him put himself between the threat and us, watched him become the monster he'd promised to leave behind. For us. To protect us. One of the remaining men went down. Then silence, thick and suffocating. Fernando was somewhere off camera, and the last man was circling, hunting him now. The tension stretched, seconds feeling like hours. Then movement. The last man appeared on the East Garden monitor, and Fernando stepped out behind him. No hesitation, no mercy. It was over in seconds. Fernando stood alone in the garden, surrounded by fallen enemies, breathing hard. Even on the grainy monitor, I could see the blood on his shirt, the way his hands shook slightly as he lowered his weapon. Then he looked up, directly at the camera, and I saw the truth written across his face. This was who he'd been, who he could still be when pushed. Not the patient father building tree houses, not the gentle man reading bedtime stories, but the monster who protected his own with absolute, brutal efficiency. Marco's radio crackled. Perimeter secure. All threats neutralized. No casualties on our side. "What about Mr. Greco?" I asked, my voice shaking. "He's fine, ma'am. Not a scratch." Marco's expression held something like respect. "I've served with a lot of dangerous men, but I've never seen anyone move like that. He's something else entirely." Minutes later, the door unlocked. Fernando stood there, changed clothes, hair damp from shower, looking every inch the respectable businessman. But I could see it now, the violence lurking beneath the civilized surface. The capacity for brutal action hidden behind patient smiles and gentle hands. Andrea launched himself from my lap. "Fernando, you're okay." Fernando caught him, lifting him easily despite the exhaustion etched in every line of his body. "Of course, Piccolo. I told you I'd keep the monsters away." "You did. You were so brave." Andrea's fear had already transformed into childish admiration. "Mama was scared, but I told her you'd win." "Did you?" Fernando's eyes found mine over Andrea's head. "Your mama is very smart to be scared. Monsters are scary things. But not to you, right? You're not scared of anything." Fernando's smile was sad. "I'm scared of lots of things, Andrea. But I'm most scared of letting anything happen to you or your mama. That's why I had to be very, very careful tonight." He carried Andrea upstairs, the domestic scene surreal after the violence I'd witnessed. I followed in a daze, my mind trying to reconcile the 2 versions of Fernando, the tender father and the efficient killer. After settling Andrea back in bed, reassuring him until his eyes grew heavy with exhaustion, Fernando and I stood in the hallway between our rooms. Dawn was breaking, washing everything in pale light that felt obscene after the darkness. "You saw," he said quietly. "It wasn't a question. All of it. And now you know." His voice was flat. what I'm capable of, what I've always been capable of. I looked at him, this man who just killed 6 people to protect us, who had blood on his hands both literally and metaphorically, who stood there waiting for my judgment like it mattered more than anything. I know, I said slowly, that you kept us safe, that you stood between us and violence, and you didn't hesitate. I moved closer, my voice dropping. I know that everything you told me about walking away was true, but I also know that you'll never fully leave that world behind, because that world is part of who you are. Does that mean you're leaving? The vulnerability in his voice cracked something in my chest. Taking Andrea and disappearing the moment you can? I should have said yes. Should have confirmed that this was exactly why I'd left 5 years ago. But watching him tonight, seeing him become a monster to protect his family, had shifted something fundamental in my understanding. No, I whispered. I'm not leaving. Because for the first time, I understand that the monster isn't the problem. The problem is me being too scared to accept that sometimes monsters are necessary. That sometimes the only thing standing between the people we love and the darkness is someone willing to walk into that darkness for us. Fernando's eyes widened, shock and hope warring across his features. Luana, I'm still scared, I admitted. Terrified, actually, but I'm not running anymore. He closed the distance between us, his hands cupping my face with trembling gentleness. I need you to understand something. What I did tonight, what I'm capable of doing, it's only for you and Andrea. Only to protect what's mine. I'm not going back to that life. But I won't apologize for using every weapon I have to keep you safe. I know, and I did. Finally, completely, I understood. I know exactly who you are, Fernando. All of it. And I'm choosing to stay anyway. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable. His lips on mine, fierce and desperate, and full of 5 years of longing. I kissed him back, pouring everything into it. My fear, my acceptance, my surrender to the truth I'd been running from. We were both monsters in our own way. Him through action, me through denial. But together, maybe we could be something better. Something whole. The kiss ended, leaving us both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together in the hallway flooded with morning light. Fernando's hands were still cradling my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with reverent gentleness. I should check on the perimeter, he said quietly, though he made no move to let me go. Make sure everything is secure. You should rest. I pulled back enough to really look at him. His eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, fine lines of tension bracketing his mouth. When did you last sleep? Doesn't matter. He stepped away, the professional mask sliding back into place. I need to coordinate with Marco, make arrangements for cleanup, contact my lawyer about the police report. Fernando, he paused at the stairs, not turning around. I'll be on the roof if you need me. Before I go to think. Then he was gone, and I stood alone in the hallway, my lips still tingling from his kiss, my heart still racing from everything that had happened. The violence, the acceptance, the terrifying, exhilarating leap into the unknown weed just taken together. I checked on Andrea. He was sleeping peacefully, one arm flung over his head, the morning light painting his face in gold. So innocent, so untouched by the darkness that had surrounded us tonight. I pressed a kiss through his forehead and quietly closed the door. Then I went to find Fernando. The roof access was through a door I'd never noticed, up a narrow staircase that opened onto a flat expanse overlooking the entire estate. The sun was fully risen now, burning off the last shadows of night, making everything look clean and new despite what had happened in those gardens just hours before. Fernando stood at the far edge, hands gripping the stone balustrade, shoulders tight with tension. He'd changed again, this time in jeans and a dark Henley, but I could see the bandage peeking out from beneath his left sleeve. You lied, I said, moving toward him. You said you weren't hurt. He glanced at the bandage, dismissive. Graze. Nothing serious. Let me see. Luana, it's fine. Let me see, Fernando. My voice was firm. Please. He turned, studied my face for a long moment, then carefully rolled up his sleeve. The bandage covered his forearm, white gauze already spotted with blood. My hands were steady as I unwrapped it, revealing the angry red line where a bullet had carved through skin and muscle. Not deep, but not nothing either. This needs proper stitches, I said. I've had worse. It'll heal. That's not the point. I rewrapped it carefully, my fingers gentle. You took a bullet for us. The least you can do is let me take care of you. Something shifted in his expression, softening the hard edges. I've been taking care of myself for a long time, amore mio. I'm not used to anyone else trying. Get used to it. The words came out more fierce than I'd intended. If I'm staying, if we're doing this, then you don't get to shut me out anymore. Not the good parts, not the bad parts, not any of it. He was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching mine. Then he nodded slowly. All right. We stood there, the morning sun warming our faces, the estate sprawling below us like a kingdom we defended. In the distance, I could see Marco and his team moving through the gardens, their presence a reminder that this peace was temporary, maintained through constant vigilance. Is it really over? I asked quietly. Vittorio. Fernando's jaw tightened. The men he sent won't be reporting back. That sends a message. But whether he accepts it or pushes harder, he shook his head. I put out word through my remaining contacts. Made it clear what the cost will be if he comes after us again. Most men would back off after losing 6 soldiers in one night. But not Vittorio. He's proud, stubborn. He sees my exit as a personal betrayal. Fernando turned to face me fully. I may have to take more direct action. End this permanently. The implication hung between us. You mean kill him? I mean ensure he can never threaten my family again. His voice was steady. Yes, if necessary. That means kill him. Does that change things? Does knowing I'm willing to do that make you want to run again? I should have been horrified. Should have recoiled from the casual way he discussed taking a life. But after watching him tonight, after seeing him become violence personified to protect us, I understood that some threats couldn't be reasoned with, could only be eliminated. No, I said quietly. It doesn't make me want to run. It makes me realize how naive I was 5 years ago. I thought love should be simple, clean, uncomplicated. I thought if I just removed myself from your world, everything would be better. I moved closer, my hand finding his uninjured arm. But I was wrong. I ran because I loved you too much, and I thought you'd destroy me. I thought your darkness would consume everything good between us. And now, his voice was rough with emotion. Now I know that only you can save us. The admission felt like surrender and victory all at once. Your power, your connections, your willingness to do what's necessary. That's what keeps Andrea safe. That's what keeps me safe. I spent 5 years trying to convince myself I was better off without you, that Andrea was better off without a father like you. But I was lying to myself. Fernando's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. I'm not a good man, Luana. I've done terrible things. I'll probably do more terrible things before this is over. I can't promise you clean hands or a clear conscience. I don't want promises you can't keep. I leaned into his touch. I want the truth. All of it. The man who builds tree houses and the man who kills to protect. The tenderness and the violence. I want all of you, Fernando. Not the sanitized version I tried to convince myself existed 5 years ago. You're sure? His eyes searched mine, vulnerable in a way I'd rarely seen. Because once you commit to this, to us, there's no going back. My world, my life, it comes with consequences. Danger. Complications. I can minimize the risks, but I can't eliminate them entirely. I'm sure. And I was. Terrified, yes. But certain a way I hadn't been about anything in 5 years. I love you. I never stopped. Even when I hated you, even when I ran. And I love the man you've become, the father you are to Andrea. I love that you're willing to be a monster, so we don't have to be. I love all of it, even the parts that scare me. The kiss was different this time. Slower, deeper, full of promise instead of desperation. His arms came around me, pulling me against him, and I felt 5 years of loneliness crack open and bleed out. We'd both been broken in different ways, both been running from different demons. But together, maybe we could find something resembling peace. When we finally broke apart, the sun was high overhead, the world continuing its indifferent spin despite the seismic shift in ours. Fernando rested his forehead against mine, his breath warm on my face. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "About Vittorio. About what I'm planning. Okay, I've set up a meeting. Neutral ground, public place. Tomorrow night." His hand tightened on my waist. "I'm going to offer him one last chance to walk away. If he refuses, if he makes any move against you or Andrea." He didn't finish, didn't need to. Fear spiked through me. "Let me come with you." "Absolutely not." "Fernando, if this is about us, about our family, then I should be there. We do this together." "No." His voice was absolute. "Andrea needs at least one parent who isn't walking into a potential trap. And I need to know you're safe, here, protected. I can't focus if I'm worried about you. And what am I supposed to do? Just wait here wondering if you're coming back?" His smile was sad. "Have faith. Trust that everything I've done, everything I'm about to do, it's all for you and Andrea. For the life we're going to build together." He pulled me close again. "I've survived worse than Vittorio. I'll survive this too, because now I have everything to live for." I wanted to argue, to insist he let me help. But looking into his eyes, seeing the determination and love and fierce protectiveness there, I understood this was something he needed to do alone. Not because he didn't trust me, but because protecting us was written into his very DNA. It's who he was, who he'd always been, even when I'd been too scared to accept it. "Promise me you'll come back," I whispered against his chest. "I promise." His lips pressed against my hair. "I've spent 5 years searching for you, Luana. Now that I have you back, now that I have both of you, nothing in this world could keep me away." We stood there on the roof as the day stretched toward afternoon, holding each other, drawing strength from the connection we'd finally admitted still existed. Below us, the estate continued its routines. Andrea would wake soon, looking for both of us. Life would continue, complicated and dangerous and beautiful in its complexity. I'd spent 5 years running from this man, convinced his darkness would destroy me. But standing here, wrapped in his arms, accepting all of him, the tender and the violent, the past and the present, I finally understood the truth. We were both scarred, both complicated, both carrying darkness we couldn't fully escape. But together, we could carry it better. Together, we could build something strong enough to withstand whatever came next. "Whatever happens tomorrow," I said quietly, "we face it together. Even if I'm not physically there, you carry us with you. Me and Andrea, your family." Fernando's arms tightened, pulling me impossibly closer. "My family," he repeated, the words full of wonder. "After everything, after all I've done, I get to have a family." "You were always going to have us," I said. "I just needed time to accept it." We stayed there until Andrea's voice calling for us drifted up from below, until the immediate present demanded our attention. But something fundamental had shifted. We'd crossed a line we could never uncross, made a choice we could never unmake. And for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Because whatever it was, we'd face it together. Monsters and all. 2 weeks later, I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of Andrea's laughter drifting out from the gardens. The sound that had once meant we needed to move, to run, to disappear into another anonymous city, now meant home. Safety. Peace. Fernando had returned from the meeting with Vittorio 3 days after our conversation on the roof. He'd come back with blood on his knuckles and exhaustion in his eyes, but he'd come back. That was all that mattered. He hadn't shared details, and I hadn't asked. Some things were better left in the shadows where they belonged. What I didn't know was that Vittorio would never threaten us again. The word had spread through Fernando's old network. The Greco family was off limits. Untouchable. Anyone who thought otherwise would learn the same lesson Vittorio had learned, permanently. I found him in the garden, Andrea on Fernando's shoulders, reaching for an apple hanging from a low branch. Fernando stood steady beneath him, hands gripping Andrea's legs, his face tilted up with patient attention. Almost piccolo, just a little further. "Got it." Andrea's triumphant cry was followed by the soft thump of the apple falling into his waiting hands. "Mama, look." I picked it myself. "I see, Tesoro. You're getting so tall." I moved closer, accepting the apple Andrea thrust toward me. "Should we make a pie?" Can Fernando help? Andrea asked, already squirming to get down. Fernando lowered him carefully, and our son immediately grabbed both our hands, swinging between us. He's good at cooking now. He made pancakes yesterday without burning any. Only 2 were burned, Fernando corrected with mock seriousness. That's significant improvement. They were very black, Andrea stage whispered to me. But I ate them anyway because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I laughed, the sound feeling strange and wonderful in its ease. When had laughter become so simple again? When had this become natural instead of terrifying? We spent the morning in the kitchen, flour dusting every surface, Andrea's questions endless and enthusiastic. Fernando was patient, teaching him to roll dough, showing him how to cut the apples just so. They worked together with the same easy coordination they developed over the past 2 weeks, a father and son learning each other's rhythms. I watched them, this man and this boy who shared the same stubborn jaw and storm blue eyes, and felt something settle in my chest. This was real. This was ours. And I was finally ready to claim it completely. After lunch, when Andrea was napping off his sugar high from taste testing the pie, Fernando found me on the terrace. I'd taken to spending afternoons there, reading in the sun, letting myself believe in permanence. Can we talk? He asked, and something in his tone made me set my book aside. Of course. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. He sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. Everything is actually remarkably right, which is why I wanted to discuss something with you. I turned to face him, reading the tension in his posture. You're making me nervous. Don't be. His hand found mine, fingers lacing together with familiar ease. I wanted to talk about Andrea, about his future, our future. Okay. Fernando was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. He's been calling me Fernando since we met, which is fine. I understand why. But lately, I've noticed he started saying my dad to Maria and Marco. Not to me directly, but about me. His voice was soft, vulnerable. And I was thinking about names, about what he calls himself. My heart started beating faster. What are you asking, Fernando? I want to ask your permission to legally adopt him, to give him my name. He squeezed my hand. I know he's already mine, biologically, but I want it official, legal. I want the world to know that Andrea is my son, that you're both my family. Tears pricked my eyes. You want to change his name to Greco? Only if you agree. Only if you think it's right. His eyes were intense, pleading. I know Marino has been his identity for 5 years. I know that name represents his whole life with you. I'm not trying to erase that or take it away, but I want him to have my name. I want him to carry it knowing that I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of him carrying it. I thought about Andrea Luca Marino, the identity I'd built for my son out of fear and necessity. The name that had kept us safe, kept us hidden, kept us separate from this man who loved us both so fiercely it sometimes hurt to witness. And I thought about Andrea Luca Greco, the identity that would connect him to his father, to his heritage, to the complicated legacy Fernando was working so hard to transform into something clean and legitimate. Yes, I said, the word coming out choked with emotion. Yes, I agree. I want him to have your name. I want the world to know he's yours. Fernando's expression cracked open, relief and joy and something deeper flooding across his features. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. Thank you, he whispered into my hair. Thank you for trusting me with him. With both of you. We're a family, Fernando. That means we belong to each other. All of us. I pulled back to look at him. And speaking of names and belonging, I think we need to talk about something else too. His eyebrow raised, questioning. If Andrea is going to be Andrea Greco, don't you think his mother should share that name too? The words came out softer than I'd intended. I mean, eventually, when you're ready, when we're ready. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that looked suspiciously like tears. Luana Greco, he said, testing the words. Are you proposing to me, amore mio? I'm saying that I'm all in, completely. With you, with this life, with everything it means. I touched his face, feeling the familiar scratch of his beard against my palm. But I think you should be the one to officially ask. When the time is right. When you're sure. I'm sure right now. His voice was fierce. I've been sure since the moment I saw you in that cafe. But I want to do this right. Court you properly. Show you that I could be the man you deserve, not just the man who protects you. You already are both those things. Then let me prove it every day. Let me earn that yes properly. He pressed his forehead to mine. But know that I will ask Luana. Soon. And I hope when I do, you'll say yes. I will. I whispered. I already know I will. We sat there as the afternoon stretched toward evening, holding each other, planning a future that once seemed impossible. When Andrea woke, we told him together, explaining that he would be getting a new name, that he would legally be Fernando's son. His response was characteristically Andrea. Does that mean I can call you Papa instead of Fernando? Because Marco said that's what Italian boys call their daddies, and I want to be Italian like you. Fernando's face transformed, joy and love and wonder all at once. You can call me whatever you want, Piccolo. But yes, Papa would make me very happy. Okay, Papa. Andrea tested the word, grinned, then threw his arms around Fernando's neck. Can we still build things together? Even with my new name? Especially with your new name. Fernando's voice was thick with emotion. We'll build everything together. Your mama, you and me. We're a team now. A family. That evening, after Andrea was asleep, Fernando opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving. We sat on the terrace under the stars, glasses in hand, the estate quiet and peaceful around us. To new beginnings, Fernando said, raising his glass. To legitimate lives, I added, touching my glass to his. To Andrea Luca Greco, his smile was soft. And to his mother, who gave me a reason to become someone better. To monsters who choose to be men, I said quietly. And to the people who love them anyway. We drank, the wine sweet and rich, and I thought about everything that had brought us to this moment. The fear, the running, the violence, the acceptance. 5 years of separation that had ultimately led us back to each other, changed but somehow stronger for the breaking. Do you have any regrets? Fernando asked, reading my thoughts as he so often did now. About how things happened, about the 5 years apart. I considered the question seriously. I regret that you missed so much of Andrea's early life. His first words, his first steps, all those moments you can never get back. I took his hand, but I don't regret leaving, because I needed to grow up, to understand myself, to learn what I was willing to accept and what I needed. And you needed to become who you are now. We weren't ready for each other 5 years ago, but we are now. We are, he agreed. And I promise you, Luana, I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of this. Of you, of Andrea, of the trust you're placing in me. I know you will. And I did. Completely. Because that's who you are. Not the monster. Not the boss. Not the man you used to be. You're Fernando Greco, Andrea's papa, and the man I love. And that's enough. That's everything. We sat under the stars, drinking wine and planning futures, until the night grew deep and the world grew quiet. When we finally went inside, Fernando walked me to my door, though we both knew the pretense of separate rooms was becoming thin. Good night, amore mio, he said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Good night, Fernando. I caught his hand before he could leave. Thank you. For everything. For fighting for us. For becoming who we needed you to be. You're everything I didn't know I needed, he said simply. You and Andrea. My family. My forever. Forever. The word used to terrify me. Now it felt like a promise, solid and real and beautifully possible. I watched him walk to his room. This man who'd been a stranger, then a lover, then a monster, then a memory, and now something more complex and real than any of those labels. He was Fernando. Flawed, dangerous, tender, fierce. Mine. And I was his. Completely. Finally. Without reservation or fear. Through the connecting door, I could hear Andrea's soft breathing, steady and peaceful. Our son, Andrea Luca Greco. The name felt right, felt true in a way Marino never quite had. Tomorrow, we'd start the legal process. We'd make it official. But tonight, I let myself simply exist in this moment of perfect, improbable peace. 5 years ago, I'd run from this man because I loved him too much and feared him even more. Now I was running toward him, toward us, toward a future I was finally brave enough to claim. The monsters were still there, lurking in the shadows. They always would be. But together, we were stronger than any darkness that tried to claim us. Together, we were whole. And that was everything. 6 months later, I stood in Andrea's doorway, watching him sleep in his ship bed, his dark curls splayed across the pillow. The underwater mural had been his choice when Fernando offered to redecorate. He wanted to keep it, said it reminded him of the first night he'd felt safe. That a 4-year-old understood the concept of safety in those terms broke my heart and healed it simultaneously. The house was quiet around me, the kind of peaceful silence I'd once thought impossible. No running footsteps in the hallway. No bags packed by the door. No contingency plans mapped in my mind for when we'd need to disappear again. Just peace. Hard won. Fiercely protected, impossibly real. He still sleeps like that. Fernando's voice came from behind me, soft and low. On his back, one arm out like he's reaching for something. I leaned back against him as his arms came around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. He's always slept like that. Even as a baby, I wish I'd seen it. There was no bitterness in his voice anymore, just wistful acknowledgement of time lost. But I'm grateful for every night I get to see it now. We stood there, two people who'd found their way back to each other through violence and fear and stubborn, complicated love. The ring on my left hand caught the hallway light. The simple platinum band he'd given me 3 months ago when he proposed on the same terrace where we'd first confessed our truths. The wedding was planned for spring, small and intimate, just family and the few people who'd helped us survive. Andrea would carry the rings, a job he took with solemn 4-year-old seriousness. He'd already practiced walking slowly at least 100 times, Fernando patiently timing him each attempt. Come to bed, Fernando murmured against my neck. He'll still be there in the morning. I know, but I didn't move, couldn't quite tear myself away from the sight of my son, sleeping peacefully in a room he wouldn't have to leave, in a home that was truly ours. I'm just remembering. Remembering what? 5 years ago, the last time I watched him sleep before we left you. The memory was vivid, sharp-edged despite the time past. He was 6 weeks old, so tiny. I'd packed everything we could carry, waited until you left for a meeting, and I just stood there watching him sleep, knowing I was about to tear apart his life before it really began. Fernando's arms tightened around me. You did what you thought you had to do, what you thought would keep him safe. I was so scared. My voice dropped to barely a whisper. Scared of your world, of what it would do to him, to us. Scared that loving you meant destroying myself. So I ran, and I convinced myself I was being brave. Being strong. Protecting my son from a monster. I was a monster, Luana. You weren't wrong about that. No. I turned in his arms to face him. You were a man who did monstrous things. There's a difference. It took me 5 years and almost losing everything to understand that. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone in that gesture that had become so familiar. And now I know that the scariest thing wasn't your capacity for violence. It was my capacity to love someone capable of it. I pressed my palm against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong. I ran from you, but I was really running from myself. From the truth that I could love someone so completely despite, or maybe because of all their complications. We moved to our bedroom, the space I'd once found suffocating, now feeling like sanctuary. The moonlight streamed through the windows, painting everything in silver. Fernando pulled me close as we settled into bed, my back against his chest, his arms secure around my waist. Do you still think about running? He asked quietly. When things get difficult, when the old fears resurface, do you think about taking Andrea and disappearing? I considered lying, giving him the easy answer. But we'd built this second chance on brutal honesty, and I wouldn't diminish that now. Sometimes, not because I want to leave, but because running was my survival instinct for so long. When Andrea gets sick, when I see someone who reminds me of Vittorio's men, when you come home with that look in your eyes that says you've had to handle something dark, I lace my fingers through his. But the difference is now I don't act on it. I breathe through it, remind myself where I am, who we are, and the urge passes. I'm sorry you still carry that fear. Don't be. It's part of my story, our story. It made me who I am. I shifted to look at him. Besides, you carry your own demons. I see it sometimes, in the middle of the night when you think I'm sleeping. You get this look like you're seeing ghosts, remembering things you wish you could forget. His smile was sad. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Two broken people trying to build something whole. We're not broken anymore. We're healing. Together. I pressed a kiss to his jaw, and Andrea gets to grow up watching that. Watching two people who love each other, flaws and all, building a life on honesty instead of pretense. He asked me today what I used to do for work before. Fernando's voice was careful. I knew this question would come eventually, but I still wasn't prepared for it. What did you tell him? The truth, as much as he could understand. That I used to work for my family doing things that weren't always good. That I made choices I'm not proud of, but that I've spent years trying to be better. He thought about it for a long time, then asked if I was still trying to be better. Fernando's voice caught. I said yes, every day. He said that was good, because his teacher says trying is what matters most. Tears stung my eyes. He's a wise little boy. He's extraordinary. Like his mother. We lay there in comfortable silence, listening to the house settle around us. Somewhere down the hall, Andrea stirred, mumbled something in his sleep, then quieted. The sound that would once have sent adrenaline spiking through my system now just made me smile. I never thought I'd have this, I said softly. A home, a family, the luxury of planning a future instead of just surviving the present. Neither did I. Fernando's hand splayed across my stomach, possessive and protective. I thought the best I could hope for was a clean exit. A quiet life alone, away from the violence. I never imagined I'd get you back, get to know my son, build something real and good and permanent. Are you happy? I asked. Truly? Even with all the complications, the adjustments, the work it takes to stay legitimate. Luana. He turned me to face him, his eyes intense, even in the darkness. I have you in my bed every night. I have a son who calls me Papa and looks at me like I hung the stars. I have a legitimate business that's actually thriving. I go to sleep without blood on my hands and wake up without ghosts in my head. His voice roughened. I'm not just happy. I'm at peace. For the first time in my entire life, I'm at peace. I kissed him, slow and deep, pouring 5 years of separation and 6 months of rebuilding into it. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, I rested my forehead against his. I love you, I whispered. The man you were, the man you are, the man you're becoming. All of it, all of you. I love you, amore mio. My whole heart, my entire life. He pulled me close, tucking me against him like I was something precious. Thank you for coming back, for giving us this second chance. Thank you for fighting for it, for us. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth and safety of his presence sink into my bones. For being exactly what we needed, even when I was too scared to admit it. The night deepened around us, the world outside continuing its indifferent spin while our small corner of it remained wrapped in peace. I thought about the woman I'd been 5 years ago, terrified and alone with a newborn, running from the only man she'd ever loved because fear had been louder than hope. I thought about the woman I'd become, still carrying scars, but no longer letting them dictate my path. Strong enough to stay when staying was harder than running. Brave enough to love someone complicated, dangerous, imperfect. I thought about the family we were building, messy and unconventional and absolutely real. A father working every day to be worthy of his second chance. A son growing up knowing he was loved fiercely, protected absolutely. A mother learning that love didn't have to be simple to be true. Through the walls, I could hear Andrea's soft breathing, that sound that had once meant we needed to keep moving, keep hiding. Now it meant home. Permanence. A future stretching out before us. Uncertain in details, but certain in foundation. Fernando's breathing deepened, evening out as sleep claimed him. But I stayed awake a while longer, savoring the weight of him beside me, the ring on my finger, the child sleeping down the hall. Savoring the impossible, improbable, beautiful reality of our life. I'd spent 5 years running from fear, from love, from the truth of who I was and what I needed. But running had only brought me back here, to this man, to this moment, to this understanding that sometimes the thing you fear most is exactly what you need to survive. No more running, no more fear, just this love and commitment and the courage to face whatever came next together. I closed my eyes, Fernando's heartbeat steady beneath my palm, and let myself finally, completely, fall into the peace we'd fought so hard to claim. We were home. We were whole. We were everything.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.